Tuesday of every month from September through May. So May will be our last meeting, and they're open to the public. And if you are not a member of the Historical Society, we would love to have you. Being a member supports what we do all the rest of the year. This evening we have a special program on tell your story, I guess. Share something, share an object. And so volunteers from the art community and from other places have brought objects to share with you. And so each will present that individually. Any other announcements I need to make before we get started?
We do have membership applications over here if anyone would like one. I know a lot of you are members, but.
And it only costs $25 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, a year. We'd love $25 a month. But, Arlene, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Arlene Voss is our secretary, and she's going to introduce each of our presenters, which will have 5-10 minutes each, and then we'll be open for questions.
Yeah, whatever time they need.
Yeah.
Okay, so, the first one is gonna be Chris Parkinson. Chris Parkinson, come up here and tell us about your stuff.
Well, this isn't exactly Wakulla County, but it sort of is. I know these teeth in this jaw came from Wakulla County. And I brought my vintage alligator purses. And this one has, the bottom to it is somewhere, but not with me. But the stitchings come out and you can kind of see how they're made. They're mostly come from Cuba, I think, and these are not really alligators, they're caimans. And so that one's real alligator. This one has a lot of plastic, but this part's real alligator. And then this one is all alligator. And it's got the biggest head, and I paid about $125 for it in a thrift shop a couple years ago. But I was thrilled to pieces. And then of course this is just plastic stuff that's imitation alligator. And then when I was a kid and we first moved to Florida, you could buy these in all the souvenir stands. And same deal, it's a caiman, not an alligator. And my parents bought me one. I think we went down to the Keys and we lived in a trailer. So I had this sitting up in the front window of the trailer for about 3 years. And eventually its tail came off. It went into the trash, and I found this in a thrift shop just a few years ago, and it has its tail broken too.
That gator tail's real good.
Well, yeah, I think it broke because it has a wire in it, and you know, probably the tail was a little flimsy.
We thought you got hungry, Chris.
Well, no, actually I'm pretty much vegetarian. But anyway, they've been fun, and if I see any more anywhere, I'll probably buy them too.
So what is that jaw from?
Oh, it's an alligator.
Oh, it's the alligator.
Yeah,
jaw?
actually, my dog had chased a great big huge alligator at my house. And I called Fish and Game, which of course they sent, a lot of you know, Houston Taft out to take care of it. And it was, I think, about 8 to 10 feet long, which I thought they would move it somewhere, but they don't move them when they're that big. They just go ahead and kill them. But the gator was missing a front foot, and Houston said, really, I had it put out of its misery. It was starving. It was not able to eat right. This flesh wasn't filled out like it was supposed to be, and I'm thankful it got stuck on the other side of the fence. Otherwise, my dog would have been its dinner. I had this 55-pound golden retriever mix that was totally fearless. I mean, I would come out in the yard and he would have ground rattlers up ready to strike. And he used to chase the mother bear with her 2 cubs and so on. So anyway, didn't get to be eaten by the alligator. So I told Houston I would love to have the jaw from the gator. And somehow I did not get the skull from the gator. And I think I went by his house, or else he dropped off a couple of small skulls one day, but I never did get that big one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, our next presenter is Jan Holtman.
Well, I've been asked to do a project. And I am going to be working on putting the old jail on the National Registry. And it's Art Deco. And I just thought, I wonder if a lot of people even know what Art Deco is, because I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I remembered a friend back in Illinois that had a collection of Art Deco. So I kind of went through some of my things, and I found a scrapbook that probably came from an auction with some other things, because my husband and I used to go to a lot of auctions. And guess what? It has a lot of Art Deco. But just to kind of start at the beginning of Art Deco, was a period of about 1920 to probably 1940, kind of the gay 90s. But one thing that I did back in Illinois, and these stoves were in my collection, and I kind of remembered that there was like a comparison of when styles changed, and it had to do with when things were mass produced and making things more economical. So these are the two stoves, and you can see this one that's really, really ornate, and those were really handcrafted a lot with wood molds first, and then cast into the nickel and the other parts of the stove. And then with the Art Deco period, it became really, when things were mass produced, it became plainer, but still had a little detail, and everything was very symmetrical. And so there's some really good examples in this scrapbook. So you can look through it on your own, but there's a few things that I wanted to show. Part of the way that you can identify it is things were symmetrical. So you can see kind of even in this advertisement of the cupboard that it's symmetrical in design. And there's you almost don't see that these are girls, but they're two girls, and the way that they're posed is very symmetrical also. And linear and geometrical. So you could kind of go through this and just see some examples. And I didn't think I had anything Art Deco, but guess what? I have a cupboard, or a chest really, that was my grandmother's, and it got handed down to my parents and then to me. But this would be an example. So I went through my house and to see what I had, and here's an example of the stylized floral, and the lines would be a mark of Art Deco, and this was my grandmother's, so I don't remember her ever getting this, and it was always there when I visited. And I don't know if this is really Art Deco or not, because I don't know the history and it's not marked, but it would be an example, because the symmetrical and the geometrical handles on it. And this was my mother's. She always had powder in it. I think some of you said you could remember your mother having something like this. And this too. The geometrical design of it, the linear lines of it. And this was you'll have to excuse my little craft job here because I put it together rather quickly. But in this scrapbook, there were some pictures of rooms. And I thought those would be really good examples of what the residents in the jailer lived in the jail. So what the rooms might have looked like in that time period.
Very
So
good.
just come up and when you have a chance and you can look through the magazine, or should I pass it around?
No,
No,
we're
just-
gonna come up afterwards, yeah.
My grandpa, Willie T. Green, kept real good records. He always had a big book like this, and he would keep a daily record. He would put the day, the month, the day, and down the side, and then what he did that day. So he kept daily records from like, well, he got married to my grandmother in 1904. He was born in 1881 in, if I'm not mistaken, in the suburbs of Meadowlark. Over on Lawhon Mill Road. His mother, whose name was, oh goodness, Sanders Green Mathers. She married my grandpa's dad, and she had a lot of land over there, all the way from Horace Mathers Farm to below on Lawhon Mill Road. Anyway, so if you want to just look at, and one of the interesting things is the last month of my grandpa's life, he started out April of 1923. He started out about preaching at Curtis Mills on that Sunday, the 1st. Then he had conference for several days. Then a church, he went to church at Whidden Lake and preached. And he was at home. He had taken care of his father-in-law, who had been sick and had died in, I think he died in April, about this time in April. But anyway, the last things he wrote was on the 11th, he said, nursing Papa, who's very sick. And then on the 17th, he just dittoed that, nursing Papa. He called his father-in-law Papa. He said, sick myself, fever. He dittoed that down to the 24th, and that was the last thing he wrote. And then he died in May. And I was told that he and my grandpa Gwaltney, who was my grandmother's father, and one of my grandmother's sisters died within a month of each other with typhoid fever in 1923. So it's just interesting because he kept such good records. And like I say, he always had this big ledger book like this, and these are copies here of his record keeping. And at one point, he was the county agent, and he was appointed by the governor at that time, who was Sidney Katz, to be the chairman of the Food Supply and Conservation Committee of Oklahoma County, whatever that was. Then my mother, and most of you have heard me say this, she was a teacher in one-room schoolhouse here in Meadowlark. They called it Live Oak, and it was, if you know this part of the country, if you go Emmett Whaley Road, and where Emmett Whaley Road ends into Lawhorn Mill Road is where the schoolhouse was, and she lived 1 mile down the road, so had to walk to school, of course, every day because they didn't have a car. So she started teaching at 18 in that one-room schoolhouse. The superintendent, Mr. Pygott, got her a temporary certificate that year and told her to study hard because he wanted her to take the test in February, the state test. And the interesting thing, and some of you have heard me say this, but this is one of her teaching certificates. And she had to take the test. She took the test that year, passed it. She had to take it the next year, passed it. Anyway, she took the test 3 different times, I think it was. And the interesting thing is that the test scores and the title of the test, like the tests were orthography, reading, arithmetic, English grammar, composition, geography, United States history, including Constitution of the U.S., psychology, theory and practice, and then it gave her the general average, and then they have the score of each one of those tests, and then her average score, and then her final grade. And that is so interesting to me, because I have one of my teaching certificates here to just show you the difference. Of course, I haven't taught in 30 years now, so I've been retired. Next month will be 30 years. But she taught some of her brothers and sisters. She was the oldest in a family of 8 children, and she taught some of her brothers and sisters, and probably some of you older ones remember Brother Emmett Whaley.
Yes.
He used to talk about her teaching him when he was a little tight. And she taught her brother named Homer Green, and I probably have told this, but he gave her a letter, wrote her a letter on her 80th birthday, and told her about something that happened, or reminded her of something that happened when he was in the 1st grade. He said, "Dear Eunice," my mom was named Eunice, he says, "when I was in your class, I peed in my pants one day, and you whipped me for peeing in my pants at school. And I got mad and walked home, which was a mile." And he said, "Well, I got home and told Grandma, and she said she whipped me for coming home without permission. So she sent me back to school, and Mama whipped him again for leaving without permission." So he says, she didn't have any trouble with me after that. But that's just an interesting thing that happened. So that was my mom, Eunice Green Ward. And my grandpa Ward, this is a picture of him, and way back, I don't remember, way back, they put this picture in the county news. They had found it, and they didn't know who it was. And so they were asking people to identify him. And several people in the county wrote the newspaper the next week, and one says, "Our last week, can you identify Mr. Bess Ward?" That was his nickname, but Bess is well remembered in our county. Thelma Cord lived very close to him in Crawfordville and stated that she knew his children well, especially his daughter, Mrs. Bessie Raker. Mr. Ward was married to the former Miss Janie Green. Now that's, my mom was Eunice Green, so they got that a little mixed up. And he was a commercial fisherman in Spring Creek, my grandfather Ward. He also had a camp in Spring Creek where people would come and camp and fish, and the judge from 1900 into the 1920s, Judge McLeod, used to go over and camp and fish at his camp. And so he became friends with the judge. So one day some of the fishermen had got caught fishing without, out of season, they call it. And my grandpa Ward told the judge's wife, says, "Well, the mullet is not a fish anyway, because he has a gizzard, so he's a bird." So the judge at that time used that in court to free those men. And not only that, but one of the men that talked here recently said, some judge down in Tampa picked that up and used it down there also. You couldn't do that today, of course. But anyway, that was just an interesting thing about my grandpa Ward. And well, this is just an interesting thing here that was in our on our church sign way back. I can't remember, but it says, "Politics is too serious to be left to politicians. Vote." And that was picked up by the Miami Herald and the Washington Post and put in their newspapers. And then the last thing here is about the Sopchoppy High School Circus. This is a copy of the program for the Sopchoppy High School Circus. This was in 1952. And this lady here, Bobby Floyd, had been in the circus at FSU, and she came as our coach at Sopchoppy High my senior year. So she decided she wanted to have a circus at Sopchoppy High School. She borrowed the equipment from FSU, brought it down, set it up in the gym, and prepared the students for a circus, and they presented the circus like to the students, and then they presented it, I think, 2 different nights to the parents and so forth. And this is a copy of the program. That was the, man, coach, Langston, I forgot his first name, but he was a Langston from the county, but she was not from the county originally. But anyway, I have some copies of this that I made, and the article I wrote, and about the circus that was in the newspaper at the time. If some of you have relatives or friends that were involved in this, or their parents were involved in this, I made some extra copies, so you could just pick up a copy of some of the things like that at the end if you would like. My grandma, Ruth Green, Gwaltney Green, was born in Meadart in 1887, and she died in 1964, but I'm named after her, Janie Ruth, so that's interesting to me. So, any questions? Not that I could answer.
1843. Following is an extract from the Florida Legislative Council of the Florida Territorial Government Senate Journal. Mr. Senator Baltzell from Leon County presented a petition of sundry citizens, 51 in total, from Leon County, praying a division of that county, that a new county may be granted, them to be called Wakulla County, which was read on, and on the motion of Senator Baltzell was referred to a select committee of Senators Baltzell, Livingston, and Young, who were appointed to this committee. And a short 3 months later, Territorial Governor Keith Call, Richard Keith Call, signed the bill establishing Wakulla County. So the date of incorporation of this county is March 11th, 1843. Now, this petition was signed by 51 people. I have a copy of it here, and it is available online at floridamemory.com. And I want you to know that we became aware of this petition because we attended the Tallahassee History Festival in Tallahassee, March 22nd. And this gentleman, Frank, stand up, Frank Terra Firma, who's a member of the Tallahassee History Society, came by and said, hey, you know, a couple of us were wondering what prompted the division of Wakulla from Leon County, because we were all one county at one point. So they poked around, and having asked that question, which requires a curious and intelligent person to do, they discovered this petition, and it's handwritten, beautifully handwritten. The state has transcribed the signers by their last name and first initials, and I put a list of them here because they're kind of difficult to read, but the whole petition is here. I'm not a historian, but with the use of my handy magnifying glass and the magnifier on the computer, I tried to transcribe this very short petition. I'm going to read it to you because it's very interesting. Where we couldn't figure out what it said, I'm going to say blank, and I will explain a couple of the footnotes. So to the blank Senate and House of Representatives of the Territory of Florida, the memorial of the undersigned, respectfully therewith. Makes no sense to me. Footnote. They call themselves memorialists. We would call them signers or signatories, but the word memorial, if you look it up in the dictionary, means someone who signs a memorial document. So they call themselves memorialists. Owing to the great extent of the County of Leon and the sparseness of the population, except at 2 points, blank, blank, of Tallahassee and Shell Point and Port Leon, and the distance of the settlements of the latter places from Tallahassee, the county seat, from 25 to 40 miles, your memorialists are made to labor under very great inconvenience, as well as burdensome expense, in attending courts and other business of daily occurrence, as with the blank. Can't figure that out. Moreover, our section of the county is almost entirely commercial. The other, referring to Leon County, agricultural. In this view of the subject, your memorialists can see no impropriety in asking that a new county may be granted therein to be called Wakulla County. Footnote here, the original word they were gonna call the county was Appalachia. And you will see that in this petition, somebody lined through it and put Wakulla spelled with a C. Wakulla County to be comprised in the boundary as follows. Beginning at the mouth of the Osceola River and running up said river until it intersects the boundaries of townships number 1 and number 2, south and east. Thence west on that line until it strikes the line of Forbes Purchase. Thence northwesterly above said line to the Ocklawahamie River. Footnote, Ocklawahamie is spelled Ocklockny. Thence down said river to the Gulf, footnote, which is spelled Gulph. The section of county contemplated to be embraced in the new county will contain nearly 200 voters, residing with few exceptions in the immediate vicinity of each other. Your memorialists would further pray, should their prayer be granted by your honorable body, that the selection of the county seat may be designated by a majority of the voters of the county. And your memorialists, as in duty bound, will ever pray. So that is the petition, and I think anything else, you're welcome to look through anything here, and any questions? Frank, anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, some of us were talking and we were always like, well, why? Why was Wakulla? You can find out the date and Port Leon and this and that, but no one actually could ever see it in writing. So, you know, we started looking and then we just truly stumbled upon that petition. I had no idea that it was there.
We're grateful, we're very grateful for you to take the time and energy to find it and then to share it with us. And that's the question, why? That's the real fun answers are in history when you ask why. Yes, sir.
So the people up at the Capitol had to say yes or no to that?
They did, yes. The territory, at that time Florida was not a state, it was still a territory.
Okay.
They had to approve the divisions of the counties.
I
And
didn't realize
there were some counties that were founded really quite late in our history. We did a lot of dividing of the state into additional counties. Thank you.
30 years of work on my part. Years ago, I started doing artifacting, finding artifacts. And after I started doing that, or quit doing that, I started reenacting. I've been a reenactor. The way I like to tell it is Robert E. Lee was with the United States Army for 30 years and with the Confederate Army for 4 years. And I've been with the Confederate Army for 30 years and 4 years in the U.S. service. But anyway, what I brought to start with, I guess, would be this book here. It's the book on the Kilcrease Artillery. The Kilcrease Artillery was formed May 27, 1863 at Camp Leon, just south of Tallahassee, by the division of Robert Howard Gamble Artillery, and Frederick Villapig, who had been Secretary of State for 10 years, became the captain of Kilcrease and remained that for until June of '64 when he resigned his commission and Patrick Houston took over. At the Battle of Natural Bridge, several rounds were fired. Joe and Buddy Page beat me to the punch, but Joe took me in there after the fact and I did some metal detecting. And what I've got here is some artillery rounds that I picked up there. You've all heard of stand a grape shot. This is 3 balls or 9 balls altogether, put together the way that a stand a grape shot would have been put together back then. The balls are original to the Battle of Natural Bridge. I picked them up on site. When you think cannonball, this is what you think of, a solid shot. And you can pass that around if you want to, it's about 6 pounds. But the way this was set up is it was set a quarter of the way into a wooden sabot. And then the powder charge was attached to the rear of it. For this particular round, it would take about 1.5 pounds of powder to fire this ball. And I've got the chart of distances and ranges and elevations and everything else here, because I've got the 1863 Field Artillery Manual with me as well. But anyway, it was set in like that. This particular ball was designed to knock down a building, to knock down trees. At the Battle of Natural Bridge, that's what they used them for, is they fired them into the trees to start with, to knock down the trees, so that they would be able to fire other rounds behind it. So when you think cannonball, this is it. Now, on the board ships, the Spanish ships, they would take the solid shot like this, put it in the oven, heat it up, and then fire it into the side of a ship. When it went inside, on the side of the ship, they could skip it off the water like you do a rock when you throw it. And when it had hit the side of the ship, it'd go inside, and because it was red hot, it'd catch the ship on fire. So it was a multi-use piece. Now, at Natural Bridge, they had both 6 pounders. This is a 6 pound cannonball. And like I say, if you want to pass it around, you can. Just don't drop it on your toe, because this is a 12 pounder. This was a charge that was used at Natural Bridge. It has a Gerardo fuse in it. It was fired into the air, and it was designed to explode in the air. And then the shrapnel rained down on the enemy. This one didn't happen. This one hit the ground, and fell apart basically on the ground. It never exploded in the air. These were hollow balls. They were set up hollow. I've got original balls that I found at Natural Bridge inside of this, along with the fuse. This is all original. I found this many pieces of it and was able to put it back together. This is a 12 pounder. There were 13 Confederate cannons supposedly at the Battle of Natural Bridge, 3 Union cannons. One of the Union cannons being a Confederate 12 pounder that they captured at East River and was used at Natural Bridge by the Union. The other 6 pounder I have here, this one is in extremely rough shape. I found it in the water at Natural Bridge, probably back in the 70s. It's got a Borman fuse in it. This is a lead fuse screwed into the top. And inside is hollow, just like the 12 pounder here. But the Borman fuse was a little bit different. It has on top of it, as this one did, numbers. And it goes 1 through 5 on top of it. And this one was punched, the number was punched at 2.5, which meant when the cannon fires, the wood here went up and wedged against the side of it. And that way it didn't come out the smoothbore barrel doing this. It stayed a straighter trajectory. When the fire came around, it was to go into that hole, light the fuse, and 2.5 seconds after it left the muzzle of the gun, it was supposed to blow up. As you can see, this one didn't. I think Joe and Buddy found probably around 60 of these at the site of Natural Bridge. They're scattered all over the country now. This is like the grape shot. I've reproduced it so you can see what it actually looked like. At Gettysburg, you heard a lot about the canister and grape. This is a canister shot, what they call the canister, for a 6 pounder. The powder charge was attached to the rear. It was loaded all at one time. And in a 6 pounder, there are 76 musket balls. And a 12 pounder, there are 96. What it does, it turns the cannon into one big shotgun. So all of these balls, when that gun fires, all of these balls just scatter out, and all of this metal and everything else just comes out with it. At 300 yards, it's very deadly. And that's why if you saw the movie Gettysburg, when they make the charge and they fire the cannon, just whole gaps in the line because of things like this. And it was not unusual for them to load 2 of these at one time in the cannon and fire. And I've also got friction primer. This is not a live one like the ball is here. That's the reason I didn't want to pass that one around. That's a live ball. It still has the gunpowder in it. And several years ago, the state did a study over at Natural Bridge where they metal detected, and the state did. And they took and found a 12-pounder like this one intact, and they upset me because it was still alive. They found it on site. They took and called the bomb squad. You had Lynn County Sheriff's Department, FDLE, and the Tallahassee Police Department all showed up with bomb squads for a single cannonball like this. They took it with a robot out in the middle of the field, set it down, and shot a hole through it. And it was a perfectly fine piece because, I mean, it's been underwater for 150 years. So I don't think that powder's any good anymore. But the state did that. But I've got here a friction primer. Like I say, it's not a live one. It's been fired already, and I put it back together so you can see how it was made. And I've also got everything that has to do with artillery here. This is about 30 years worth of research. I probably built somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 artillery pieces myself, and still have one, a 6-pound field howitzer at the house. Anyway, I've got all kinds of information, so if you got any questions, just let me know.
Thank you. Okay, and our next presenter is Jenny Jones.
This is a little Kool-Aid bottle, and this is what we used to have Kool-Aid in. We didn't have a little package that you shook. And this bottle of Kool-Aid would make so many glasses of Kool-Aid. And you really didn't have to measure that much. You just took the top off, put it in a glass of water, and stirred it up, and it would make so many of those. So I grew up with this. I lost the top to it, but no measuring was needed. Just pour it in the top, and my top full, make a glass full. All right, this is another little thing that I had grew up with. This is a little cup. And my mother would carry this in her purse when we went to church because we had a pump. And in order to get water out the pump, you know, instead of using your hand, she had this little cup that we could use to drink water from. So you know, when you go to church, you want some water. And you know those hand pumps? That's what we had to use. And this is it.
Do you know what material it's made out of?
It looks like kind of pewter.
Because those date back, way back,
Really?
to the early 1800s.
Oh, okay. All right.
Early 1800s, they were making this.
Yeah. And this, of course, was one of my grandmother's items that she had in her house back in the 40s. And you ask a young person now, what is this? Compared to a cell phone, okay. But anyway, I just kept it around. I just thought it was neat to have around. And I'm gonna tell you about this to the church. I mentioned this. I have a picture of that old white building that sits on the corner of Spring Hill Road and 267.
Mm-hmm.
That was a school back in the 40s.
Yes, it was.
In my neighborhood, the Bethel community. I had a picture of it, but I forgot it, but I'm gonna tell you about it. So when you ride by that way, think about back in the 40s, this was school. And my great grandfather was one of the people who helped build that little school. Okay, any questions? All right.
When you wanted to call somebody, how did you do it?
Oh, you had to punch this little number.
That was more fancy than my grandma.
Oh, yeah, because our phones, you had an operator. We didn't have the dial on
Yeah,
there.
well, this was a dollar. This was a dollar.
Yeah.
And you know, they used to have the ones you go around, like they come back around.
Wait
Your
for
finger. But this got a little bit more fancy in
I
your
was gonna
punch
say, that
buttons.
one's fairly new, I
Yeah.
think.
All right.
Thank you.